Thank you, thank you. Thank you for the lovely introduction. So, hello, everybody. I'm Jordan. I've been a GNOME developer for like 8 years or so. It's been quite a long time, I guess. I'm not affiliated with Flathub, which will become apparent because half the things I will say I probably could not say on behalf of Flathub anyway. So, yeah, I've been an application developer, a platform developer. I've been doing infrastructure work, all the whole 9 yards, pretty much wear many hats. And I've been working part-time for Centricular for some years now. This is the second time in LAS. It's very nice to be in Albania. Always wanted to visit. First time was back in Barcelona, where on a dare, once upon a time, we were at the GUADEC, the GNOME conference, in a beach, and I was complaining about the conference name to Sri. And he was like, why don't you do a talk on that? So we ended up doing There Is No Linux Platform talk in 2019, which will also be related to this talk, I guess, because we will go through a couple of things in that today as well. So today is similar. Sri was like, yeah, this is an issue. You all should like get together and like discuss it out. So yeah, pretty much that's how this talk came to be as well. So Flathub, this is the title of the talk I submitted. This is the real title I wanted to say. And we will go over as to why, I guess. So, a couple of years ago, when I started my Linux journey, I guess, application availability was a big deal. Like, you would choose your distribution, what you would run based on what they had packets and what tooling there was. That's like how I personally stuck around with Fedora for a long time, because it was much easier to have all the development tools I needed for GNOME, for example, and all the applications I needed. This is like no longer the case for a couple of years now, thanks to Flathub. But how we got there and what changed is a very interesting topic, which I don't think many people have been talked about. So before we get into it, we need to like look at the traditional distribution model, and which plagues us to this day, I would say. You have like 3 different user groups, I guess. You have the upstream developers, which are the ones that develop and publish the source code. You have downstreams, which are the distributions itself, the packagers that will take the source code, build it, test it, integrate it, vet it, and all that. And you have the users that will get the end result from the downstreams. So the distributions, or ISVs, as they are formally called, kinda, is the idea is that you have a single source where you place all your trust in. No matter what the developers do, the distribution will take the source code, vet it itself, and then you only need to trust the distributor for the application you will get. They will like test the software, make sure it's not malicious, or make sure it complies with laws, copyright, trademark, or accessibility, or otherwise. There are plenty of different things they do. They will try to fix security issues and give you a secure product, because they are the ones that distribute the final product to you, and supposedly fix bugs. However, the Linux distributions are not made by the people that write the software, and that comes to bite us in a lot of ways, because it's an entirely different group of people that will develop the software with, and it's a very complicated thing because there are so many moving parts, and then an entirely different set of people that will integrate it and try to make sure it's working and ship to the users the final product, which has caused a lot of issues in the past, where applications will be missing dependencies, things will crash, distributions will patch things in the wrong ways or other things. Anyway, so we have these social dynamics at play where even though the distributors themselves did not develop the software, they are in charge of dictating the release schedule, when and how users will receive the end product, how it will update it, if it will be updated. They are also the ones with access to a user base, as the upstream projects only publish a tarball. And if you want to have any users at all for your application, you have to comply with all the distribution policies, which are often conflicting, in order for anyone to see your application and what you made. So that's not all, because each distribution usually has multiple supported versions, and each of these versions is configured wildly differently and released at very different time frames, which makes it impossible to support. Additionally, the way that traditional package managers work is that every single update might possibly break a very different part of the system, which makes it impossible to test. This is a very well-documented problem that we've been trying to address with a variety of ways for a number of years. But the end result is that every single package is basically untested, and that is a known thing. There is also no guarantee what software the end user system will have. So if you're an application developer and you compile, say, for Ubuntu 24.04, the latest LTS, you still have no guarantee of what libraries might be present in the user system once they install and run the application. So, in addition to each distribution having 3 different versions, which you need to support in different ways, you also have a million other Linux distributions that everybody will ask you to support. And each one has different inclusion policies, different requirements, different configurations, that they're all look the same, but they're so slightly different and often conflicting. This can range from legal things for the inclusion process all the way to technical things, as some distributions might have a different libc than others, or some might have systemd, others will not. So how your application will behave is an entirely unknown thing, because you do not have any idea what your application will be running against. So it's basically, yeah. Additionally, you need a dedicated machine to test for each of these specific versions of each distribution. So it makes it very, very, very hard to support multiple distributions upstream as an upstream developer. So this is testing released code. Now we get into the pre-released code. Say you're developing your application and you want to test against the new version of GNOME that is not yet released. With the traditional model, you have to find the distribution that has packaged a snapshot of GNOME that is not yet released, or is some early release candidate. It has integrated properly, built it properly, it works, it does not explode because it's pre-release software, and that you can test against. And by the time all of this happened, the new release candidate is out. For example, when we release GNOME 48, the normal release, not the pre-release, it's about the time where Fedora and Ubuntu get into their beta releases. So at best, we end up with a release schedule of GNOME where we have released a final, supposedly stable binary that was entirely untested because nobody previously actually tested the alpha and beta releases because there was no possible way to do so. So very often, there are some options to do that, but it does not work at all with a traditional distro model. What else? Yeah, we have no feedback for alpha and beta releases anyway, due to these kind of things. So distributions are all supposed to vet applications. or at least that's a big claim they do. There is like usually a very, very nice initial review every time a new package is pushed out for inclusion in the distribution catalogs. But after that, it's all based on vibes, basically. Once you get the package into Debian, Fedora, or any distribution, and that's like a thing that everybody knows, everybody will admit, once you get the package in, there is like absolutely no tests, no reviews, nobody even checks for your work, and you're basically like left on your own. You can do pretty much anything. You can, and at that point, supposedly, the distribution itself is supposed to check for the source code, right? Because you do not trust the upstream developer, you trust your distributor. But the upstream developer, very, very rare, well, actually it's impossible to check the entire difference of the source code between the previous version and the new one. And even if you do that, when you are not involved in the upstream development of the project, it's impossible to understand anyway. Sometimes they do security audits, but that's like fair cases. But yeah. Here are like 2 examples. These are not out of context codes. I told Michael I will take this screenshot and quote him. He was fine with that. And it's something that every distro packager will admit openly. It's something that all the users will pretend is not the case, but everybody that ever got involved in a distro knows this to be the case. Nobody actually checks. Everything is automated, all the updates. So the moment the upstream publishes a new release, everything will like build and update on its own, regardless if it works or not. And we saw that happen as well with the exib backdoor, which by a miracle we were not impacted on. This additionally, thanks to this centralized distribution model, it makes it impossible for proprietary apps to be included. For that, you'd say that's fine, I don't want proprietary apps anyway. However, it's not only proprietary apps that are impacted by this, because it's one thing if you cannot redistribute things based on redistribution clause or being the source code being not available. You also have like open source free software projects that are like class-leading examples in how they're maintained, like OBS, that will need to ship an API key to their users. And that's also impossible to do, because the moment you include a secret in the build, you have to like give it to every downstream, or basically give it access to everybody in order to like do that. Additionally, the model was designed around a central repository, and every third-party repository is basically a thing that always breaks, and something that we have been also plagued with for years, as people will say, oh, why don't you create an apt repository or a copper? And every time there is a new upgrade or whatever, things break without even knowing how they broke to begin with. Every time it's a new, different way, somehow. And this is like mostly because this model was designed for centralized repositories. So this is how we end up in these developer dilemmas. How do you manage to support all of these different, slightly conflicting policies that are all the same, but except not, and you cannot do it at the same time? How do you keep your software up to date for everyone, since every distribution has a different release schedule, and once they release, they will not update your software? Because I forgot to mention this. At the moment, since we established that every update on every package update is basically impossible to test, that's the reason that distributions will not update packages after they were released, because they can't possibly retest it, everything. So you're stuck if there is a long-term support distribution that includes your application from 3 years ago, all the users on that distribution are stuck with the release that you made 3 years ago and keep filing issues for bugs you fixed 2.5, 3 years, or even before that. And yeah, what do you do if you cannot redistribute your keys? For us, we talked about OBS, for example, before. So again, the software is basic. Every software we run is basically untested and impossible to test. Distributions are extremely conservative with updating it. There is no real support or bug fixing practice, as that means in order to include a bug fix release, you have to retest the package, which you don't know how it will impact the rest of the system, because everything is intertwined in such a way. Users are stuck with extremely old software and will only file issues against that, and you have no way, nothing. You have no path of updates unless you try to set up a third-party repo and try to get people there. And yeah, and last, a new feature that you release today will make it to the users in an unknown amount of time that will be months, if not years in the future. So you're an app developer, you spend 2 months of your spare time developing a very nice feature that everybody was requesting, and nobody will use it for the next years. So this also has an impact on platform developers, I should say. The ones that develop the underlying system that the distributions integrate, as they don't really have any other option in order to ship their source code. They are relying on the downstream distributions in a very hard-coded way. KDE and GNOME have kind of adapted to it and been doing it for 20 years. And the example of that is that the release schedule of GNOME is always in sync with the Fedora and Ubuntu release schedules. So at least the new GNOME release gets included in the new Fedora release, and we can somewhat test and sync things. But yeah, that's still not a great situation to be in. Other software, mainly server software, embraced containers and went all in because they can then ship whatever they want the way they want it anywhere. Yeah, and everybody that has been talking about the existing model pretty much gets flamed endlessly and gets told they don't understand what is going on, or how anything works, or how Flatpak is the devil and all that. So this also has an impact on application development, as since you have a gazillion different distributions with different versions, developers have no clear target to develop against. In the couple of years ago, there is no Linux platform talk. We went into this in detail, but what we think about as Linux is not really a thing, I would say, or at least that's my main argument, because a platform is not just a kernel or the user space. It's a collection of things which nothing in the Linux world ever comes close to achieve, apart from maybe elementary OS. But yeah, it's a collection of having a target, which in this case would be the runtime and SDK you build against, tooling, design guidelines, a way to distribute to users, user support, a lot of things, I guess. And we're missing half or so in both GNOME and KDE. So since there is no target to develop against, most application developers will try and take a popular Linux distribution, try to target that, which is an impossible task as well, as we established, because every single snapshot of the distribution is different and needs to be tested. And also there are a billion versions, I guess. But yeah, most commonly they just give up and go and do literally anything else. And it's a big part why there was no Linux applications to begin with for all these years, as it's a very impossible task to do, really. There have been several attempts in the past to have applications for platforms. There was an Ubuntu apps thing when the mobile. I think it was when the mobile thing was a thing, the Ubuntu mobile. But yeah, they didn't. That none had succeeded. So more, as we talked before, you will make a release for your application. Users will have to, you're then in the merge of distributions for how and when they will, users will receive the software. Additionally, you are in the merge of the distributions for like what features you can use. So for example, you make a GNOME application or a KDE application, and you want to use a feature from the last release that was last month. Now, you have to, since most of the your users are like in some long-term support distribution, you have to wait 2 or 3 years until there is like a new enough version of the long-term distro that will finally include the feature you want, so you can actually depend on it and support it. Because otherwise, you will have like a half-implemented feature for some users, others will not see it ever, or at worst, you cannot even like include it because the previous version of whatever package you need was buggy in the previous long-term support release and was never updated anyway. So additionally, like we released GNOME 48 last month. Most of the users will not see GNOME 48 until like in a year or so when the next Ubuntu release, the long-term Ubuntu release will come. That's like the majority of users using like Linux. And most people and most application developers like Electron will not be able to like hard target APIs we created until like there's like 2 more long-term support releases that the old one will have GNOME 48. So we're talking like a time frame of like 2028 or so. So this is the traditional social contract we have between upstream developers and downstream. We saw the slide before, but this is more how it looks in practice. So, and we come around to Flatpak. Flatpak is a distribution framework that was like developed with all of these issues in mind, and in order to address those. It's one of the main attempts, but it's also the one that stuck with us, and it actually became popular. So Flatpak employs various nice technologies that were created in the last decade or so to work around a lot of these issues. The magical thing about Flatpak is that you can create an application binary that will work the same way on any Linux distribution, regardless how old it is, what user space it has on the host, when it was released, or even like technical details. The way this happens is because in order to like make Flatpak work, we had to like make a mini distro to always run applications so we can avoid the real distro that you're using. Additionally, we fixed a couple of issues by like making the design of the application distribution image-based, so you can have like atomic operations, no half updates. You will know exactly what the end system of the user will look like, because everybody will be using the same exact image. You could develop your application inside Flatpak on any distribution, because again, you will be developing against the mini distro we created in order to like bypass all the things on the host. And additionally, that also gave us an environment that we could use as a target. So since the image-based design afforded us things like being able to have easy, reproducible, deterministic, and well-defined environments where you could say you will depend on this exact image and everything there will not change, or at least its behavior will not change. And you can target that, and like your users will always be running against that image instead of like something random on the host. Additionally, the other magic thing about Flatpak is its integration with the host. Commonly, most containerization solutions focused on the exact opposite, being able to like isolate the application from the host as much as possible. But for desktop applications, you really need to integrate with the system. And Flatpak was like the first one to do so, and like the one that got everything working. So you can have like graphical applications that are isolated on, yet they can like be seamlessly work like the normal ones. However, Flatpak is not like a silver bullet, nor was it enough. And an example of that, Flatpak fixes a lot of the technical issues we have with binary distribution, but it's still the social contract between upstream and downstream can remain the same. We can replicate exactly the same issues we have today with Flatpak on top, but much like Fedora did with the Fedora Flatpak repo. So you can have like the same tooling, same runtimes, same everything being built from your existing distribution tooling, following the existing guidelines, everything and all. But doing so in a sandboxed environment that's more isolated from the host and that you could update independently. And that would have been already an improvement over to how we develop applications in general. However, we did not stop there. It would have been very, very, very easy to say, okay, here is this new technology. It will fix a lot of the issues you have, or many big issues, like not being able to like know what your application will run again, and like give you basically containers for the desktop, and say we're gonna like have the Ubuntu runtime and the Fedora runtime and whatever all. But that's not the route that was taken. Instead, when Flatpak was created, and you can see this in Alex's very early blog post, where I forgot to link here, but I think it's like called Rethinking the Linux System or something like that. You could see Alex was like thinking about this issue as well, the separation between upstream and downstream. What if instead we put developers in charge of the application distribution? So now we could like have developers publish their source code or not. If it's a proprietary application, it doesn't matter. Application developers would build the software exactly the way they expected and exactly the same way they developed and tested it. They would define exactly what dependencies they needed and how they needed them to be configured, as opposed to like saying, my application needs lib adwaita, but Ubuntu configures it that way and Fedora configures it that way. They could test it exactly as they tested it on their machine and be sure that the end user system will have the same exact application. So we created the Flatpak randoms, as I said before, which is a mini distro. And not only we put the application developers in charge of their own applications, we put the platform developers in charge of the runtimes, because it's the same issues. Instead of having the Ubuntu and Fedora runtimes, the first runtimes that were created were GNOME and KDE, putting the developers in charge of how they are built and when they are published. This meant that we could, for the first time, we could develop the runtime and like the SDK at the same pace we would do the normal releases. Application developers had a clear target that matched the platform they were targeting against. As they would make a GNOME app, they needed to like compile against the GNOME runtime, which is the obvious choice anyway. And the runtimes could be like shaped exactly the way we needed them to. We also, that was not all. We also created Flathub. Well, the joint combination of like GNOME and KDE, because it's one thing to have like your own runtime and your own applications, but you need to publish them somewhere. So Flathub was born out of that, so to allow directly publishing both the runtimes and the applications to the users, the way that we were expected and that we were confined to this new model. it has like extensive and reviews and automated processes to catch a lot of things, much like you could find in your distribution inclusion policies and reviews. And these reviews also happen every now and then when there's like a big change. Flatpak is what made possible for something like Flathub to come along and change the current dynamic we had between downstreams and upstreams. And Flathub won. We are like, a couple of years later, everybody's like publishing on Flathub. I ran the numbers a couple of minutes ago, and it was like more than half of the applications on Flathub are verified, which means the developer that wrote the application is the one that maintains the Flatpak on Flathub and directly responsible or would answer like any issue you open against it. That part, like being able to like have direct publishing made Flathub very popular, and Flatpak took off. And yeah. And we're running a bit out of time, but yeah. So conclusion. Nobody really has the resource to package all the applications centrally and do that for any distribution that exists. Distros don't do any kind of review past the initial one. They also don't like really help with issue triage or like support or development, as that is all handled in the upstream projects. And when there are issues, the issues usually just trickle down to upstream projects and issue trackers anyway. Distro publish and test its builds, admittedly so, and it's impossible to test anyway, because that's the way the distributions are like created. Yet they are still the final gatekeeper on the, that decide how and when the users get software. I think that now that Flathub is like so successful, it's time to stop packaging apps altogether. It's instead like distributions should probably focus into like making a solid operating system. It's still a pretty hard task. I'm maintaining GNOME OS. I know how hard it is, but it's also like in the last years, since everybody had like access to the same applications, every distribution is kind of the same anyway. It would be nice to have them differentiate again if they stop trying to like needlessly package any application that exists on Earth and instead find their ways to improve the operating system itself. I mean, we are so far behind between Windows and macOS, it's not even funny. If we want like software freedom to become accessible to like everyone and like for people to be able to modify, distribute, and all that, their source code, things like that need to be addressed because the current status quo only works for enterprises use cases. They still make billions of money, but none of that we will ever see on the desktop or like any normal person will see. So yeah, don't repackage needlessly applications. Let's focus on a host system that's and actually differentiate in ways. So we see like now everybody's trying a new different approach with all like the image-based immutable operating systems, which is very nice to see have so many approaches. Yet the underlying system is basically still the same. It would be nice to like explore more different approaches in every aspect of the operating system. If you're like a distribution packager, you can always help with application reviews on Flathub. We have very similar inclusion policies as to distributions. And in general, we should focus on improving applications and platforms upstream, rather than have downstream patches and like all that. Yeah. Thank you. I don't know if you have any time for questions.
Thank you so much, Jordan. If we have any questions in the room, please raise your hands. I'll come. And there we go. People who are attending online, if you have any questions, write them in the chat, either Matrix or Telegram, and we're going to read them as soon as we finish with this question.
Hi, thank you for the presentation. Mostly using NixOS and like Geeks for reproducible builds, or learning about Flatpak and Flathub was really insightful. I'm kind of curious what's been sort of the reception of Flathub when it comes to like enterprise or commercial. Is there been sort of like buy-in in that case? And then one more question related to that, the tiny distro, has that been increased in size? And maybe you could expand on that a little bit.
Can you repeat the second question again?
What has been the reception of like commercial interest in like Flathub, and then the second part of that, if you could talk a little bit more about the tiny distro that gets sort of packaged for Target.
The tiny, yes. The tiny distro, I mentioned in the slides, are the Flatpak runtimes. They're basically built from scratch, not based on any other distro. They're just from scratch build of an entire new user space. You can find more online. So as for the adoption, the problem that a lot of Linux distributions have, there are two things. Either they're community distribution, which can do anything it wants and can ship anything it wants. For example, should have no problem trusting Flathub. And there are the other stuff that enterprise distributions, where their sole economic model is being the one sole distributor of the whole operating system. So enterprise distributions will likely never have buy-in on Flathub because the entire user space we ship and the applications are built outside of their control, and they can never they won't change that. So the way the Red Hat makes money is that you go to Red Hat and say, oh, I want this and this and this, and I have this issue, but Red Hat has no control over Flathub, so they can never ship it. But I don't see any reason why community distributions would not enable Flathub by default. Additionally, honorary mention, OpenSUSE Aeon, which is like an immutable desktop by OpenSUSE, actually ships with Flathub by default, despite the conflict with enterprise things in OpenSUSE. Now, I don't think that will ever make it to the enterprise product of OpenSUSE Aeon or MicroOS or whatever it's called. But they still enable Flathub by default in, I guess, OpenSUSE product, which is really, really nice.
If we have any other questions.
So you basically said that no one wants Fedora Flatpaks.
Yes.
But they exist, and there are people who insist that we should have them. And there are some arguments which are not entirely.
So the reason they exist is that Flatpak is still a better way to distribute the binaries than RPM, right? It solves a lot of problems. But the main use case where they exist is because Red Hat needs to be able to build, to control what they ship and update it independently of the OS. So my answer to all the people that say, oh, we want Fedora Flatpak, is unless your second name is Mr. IBM, why are you asking for Fedora built Flatpaks when the upstream version is right there on Flathub?
Right, I generally agree with that, but there's also technical issues in the sense that Flathub still doesn't build for build for some architectures. There are currently a few things that.
I agree with all of that, but I think, my view on that is that everybody that brings up bespoke issues like RISC-V support or, I don't know, some other fancy new thing or something that Flathub should be doing or will eventually be doing, and it's would be planned if there was more power, is the main issue they are doing is they're trying to justify themselves. They're buying the traditional model rather than saying, okay, yeah, Flathub might not be doing everything we are used to, but it's the way forward. And it's a way to I guess, justify to themselves why we should keep the previous model that we know does not work. Because there's this very niche that nobody will use, but it's there and I want it just so I can have it on my spreadsheet of things supported, I guess.
So one of the issues that sometimes gets mentioned for distributions not shipping Fedora, the Flathub remote by default is that there's proprietary software in there, and there's also sometimes issues with, for example, codecs and things like that.
Yes.
So I think there are good reasons why, not good reasons, but there are reasons why currently it's maybe not possible to ship it.
I've heard this before, yes. Right. And Alex himself was the one that made the repository filtering that was deployed years ago. And when I had to tell Fedora maintainers multiple times last month that it exists, it's there, it would solve your issue, what you're complaining about, and it was like, oh yeah, that exists, I guess. We should really look at that. Yeah, it's like a lot of these issues could be solved with like more testing, more collaboration, more whatever. But yeah, again, I really think they're used more as a way to like keep the conversation from going anywhere rather than actual issues.
Yeah, it's fair, but I also think that we kind of have to figure out how to get more resources basically into like developing Flathub more, because it's kind of, it needs more work. Like
I agree.
It's not that
there is a lot of work to be done. Yes,
right,
certainly.
So I think we have to kind of figure out how we can fix those remaining issues and everything.
I agree, but the thing is, like, I don't think that these people will ever be satisfied. They will always find something more. And no matter how much we will keep improving, we keep improving, and we will keep improving, I guess. But yeah.
So we can take one last question that arrived online, and we can try to be quick with this so we can have a 10-minute break after this for people to get some coffee, either at home or here. So, question for Jordan. Does he feel like there might be a way to get commercial distros involved in Flathub directly? If not, what is the best way to attract contributors/maintainers to Flathub for the infra, not as app developer?
To talk to the Flathub people. I think there are like a couple of about links where you can get in touch with them. The Flathub team would be more than happy to accommodate for both commercial distributions or get more resources. There are generally like, I think 2 or 3, I guess 2.5 people that work on Flathub or something like that. And everything else is like community supported. And yeah, that's about it.
Awesome, thank you. Thank you so much, Jordan.
He
came all the way from Greece. Thank you to present. Thank you so much.